Good morning, B&H family. This is on the recording date of this is actually Monday, March 16th. The war that we've gotten into, dating back now, I guess, to March 1st. So we've got, two and a half weeks, kind of under our belt, not quite 2.5 weeks, I guess, of looking back at what's going on in the war and, kind of where we're heading right here. And so what all of us know is that, it's war is ugly, it's brutal, and it also takes lives. And so we already know that, I guess, more than a dozen American soldiers have lost their lives in this. Some in combat. We had a plane that went down in Iraq. It doesn't appear to have been, the enemy that shot it down. It seems like it was some kind of mechanical error or whatever. The plane went down and killed the crew members, the pilots that were on board. So our prayers go out to those families there that have lost loved ones in the war, those that have loved ones, in harm's way out there. So our prayers go out to our soldiers and their families. Our prayers go out to our leadership in this country as they make these decisions that they are in fact, making sound and wise decisions. That the information that they have as they make the decisions to put our kids, our blood, and our treasure on the line out there for the cause of this. And we can talk about that, and we can have different opinions, but I don't want to go too far, into that in this video, because I want to try to keep it as short as I can. But our prayers are also with all the folks that are in the Middle East and in harm's way as the Iranian military, as it is wounded, and what capability it has as it's shooting what missiles and rockets that it has left at what seems to be somewhat indiscriminate neighbors in the Middle East. I think they're trying to hit our bases and trying to make some statements, but it's a little bit of a wounded animal kind of thing, kind of striking out, it looks to me like. But again, nonetheless, it takes lives, it injures people, it takes out businesses and structures and various things. So it's, war is ugly. It really, really is. And I hope that this ends very quickly. And I think there's a really decent chance that it will. So let's talk about what's occurred over the last couple of weeks that we know, and where the pain has been felt, with us individually, like my clients, as we've seen, we've already experienced inflation and the pricing pressures that have happened, throughout, the post-COVID era, if you will. And so where prices have gone up, and we hear about the affordability crisis, and now where it looked like we were getting that, kind of under control, bringing inflation down to more tolerable and measurable things, not just from the Federal Reserve standpoint, which their target is 2% on inflation, and we were trending that way, no question about that. In some instances, I would tell you that I think we were already there with kind of a measurement of inflation, but now energy prices, because of this war in Iran, energy prices have shot up. And so, when this war began, a barrel of oil was trading between $65 to $70 a barrel. And as I sit here and speak this morning, it's trading at around $94 a barrel, I think, $95, $94 a barrel, somewhere in there. I know that over this past weekend, again, that would be the weekend of the 14th and the 15th, we were trading at over $100 a barrel. It's coming down today, it looks like, and we're looking at some global market rallies around the world and oil prices coming down. That's a good thing. That's what we want to see. But oil prices, like I said, they shot up almost immediately. Excuse me. And touched 2 weekends ago, I guess it is now, we touched nearly $120 a barrel, and then it began to come down as different information and various things as the war looked like it maybe was subsiding. We were going to get some ships through the Straits of Hormuz, and I'll touch on that in a moment. But we came down to got below $80 a barrel briefly, traded back up above 80, and then like I said, we bounced around between, let's say, the high 80s, low 90s, all the way up into over $100 a barrel. And you've seen what the Iraqis hope, or the Iranians hope to do is push oil to above $200, a barrel. That's kind of been what their claim is. I've seen some reports where, some analysts have suggested that we're going to get to $150 a barrel, and I guess all of those things are possible. But I think the probability is that we're going to kind of bounce around in this thing, gas prices, which is what you're going to be affected by, first is where you're going to see that. But again, as energy prices go up and this goes up, you're going to see it affect all kinds of things because distribution, lots of things are made from, oil or petroleum and petroleum byproducts. So again, it is a very big lever when it comes to inflation. So, and the Trump administration is well aware of this, and they know what they need to do to try to bring these prices down. So again, I think this is a case of short-term pain and long-term gain. It kind of goes back to what I talked about last year. I do believe that you're seeing lots of measures being discussed and I think beginning to be executed to open up the Straits of Hormuz, because remember that the about 20%, give or take, of all the world's oil supply all flows through the Straits of Hormuz. It doesn't affect us in this country. We get very little from that part of the world because we are energy independent and we produce 70% of our own oil and energy and natural gas here, in this country. So that's been one good thing that we have moved into this position of kind of being independent when it comes to those things. But prices are as they are right there. But like I said, but when 20% of the world's oil supply and other commerce that flows through the Straits of Hormuz, that with a wounded army and a wounded, certainly a degraded military, a degraded leadership within Iran, that's the thing that they can do, is they can continue to create havoc in the Straits, where so much of the world's commerce, including energy, flows through, especially in that part of the hemisphere, Asia and even parts of Europe, but much of Asia. Asia gets like 90% of their oil supply comes through the Straits of Hormuz, China being the primary thing there. And I think that's a lot of what, if you really kind of cut through and you're playing, look at the chessboard, not just the checkers of kind of what we watch being played out as the war and the daily noise and news that we get out of that. I think this has a lot to do with the trade wars and our economic rival and perhaps military rival and global leadership rival that we have with China. And I think, I think this, this war, part of it, not all of it, is about getting the Straits of Hormuz policed and kind of taking the equation of the Iranians to be able to control, pull that lever to disrupt. And that's what it is, a disruption, and creates pain for the rest of the world. And thus wants to get this thing over with as fast as possible so we can get back to business. And that leaves them alone to kind of refortify and build back and to continue to create havoc in the Middle East and other parts of the world, because they are the biggest sponsor of terrorism in the world and throughout the Middle East. And I think you can see that even Middle Eastern countries, I think for the most part, have kind of had enough of this. But it's a very complicated thing that I won't go into great detail on from a political standpoint, but again, from the economic standpoint. So I think we're going to, as the world looks to bring other, and we, the Americans, and alongside with the Israelis, look to bring other parts of the, other countries over into the Middle East to try to help police, if you will, the Straits of Hormuz. I know looks like some countries are going to come on board and do that, including France and some others, to try to kind of escort ships through there, because they are mining these things. They've got drones. They still, even though we've degraded their military and their Navy almost completely, they still have some missiles left, although we've taken most of that out of the equation. And that's really where they were really building up over the last, since the dropping of the bunker buster bombs back, when we took out their nuclear facilities, or at least attempted to, I don't know, 6 to 9 months ago now, I guess it was, when we did that, but they really ramped up their missile manufacturing capabilities. If you look at charts of that, how many they were making, and those things can wreak havoc, and they can fire those just about from anywhere with pretty decent accuracy and whatnot. So we've degraded that. We've now taken away their ability to manufacture those, because where they were firing those at random, I mean, just in great numbers, early on, that has diminished quite a bit. So we see, I think what we're seeing is that our effect of taking not just the missiles that they already had out, their launching capability, but also their manufacturing capability. So, and I think that's critical to be able to do that. And so, and then they've got the drones, of which they make, they've been one of the leading manufacturers of drones. They supply them to Russia, et cetera, and have been for some time. And drones are, in the new warfare that goes on out there, they are deadly, inexpensive things that can just create all kinds of havoc and destruction and death. And what it takes to make one versus what it takes for us to shoot them down, if you will, which we can, $20,000 to make, and $4 million, missiles of ours to take them down. That's a pretty bad ratio on cost benefit analysis there. So, we're still working on that and getting those things down. So anyway, I don't want to go on too long, but I will tell you that I do believe this is a similar situation to what I spoke about last year when it started with trade wars. This is actually a bombs and bullets war. So I think it will not go on indefinitely. I think we will get this thing settled out. I think you'll get oil back into a $65 to $80 trading range, which is tolerable and works kind of well for both oil producers, manufacturers, refiners, et cetera, and then puts it back into our pocket, where at the pumps and in the, in our electricity costs and all those kind of things. I think we'll start seeing that get back in line. So I urge all of you all to listen and be patient. Let your portfolios do the work that they need to do, as they are, because again, we've had markets that have been sold off as well. So it hasn't just been oil. I mean, the stock market in the United States and globally around the world have all come down during this war that again has been started 2.5 weeks ago now, as you're going to listen to this. So I think it's the same message though as it was about tariffs. Be patient. Let your portfolios do the work. If you've got any questions about this, please do not hesitate to reach out to me or the team and set up a call or come in, whatever it takes. I also urge you to go back and listen to on my Four Seasons podcast, where I think it's episodes 19 and 20, where I talk about global conflict, both from a bombs and bullets, but also to the economics of it. That it's not always just bombs and bullets. And in this case, it is bombs and bullets, but bombs and bullets lead to the economics of things. And again, it's the gas prices. It's what China, what the Asian markets need, and where this comes from. And so there's a lot of there's leverage in this as well as it relates to our country, I think. And I think a little bit of the, maybe the untold, unseen story of what the Trump administration is also trying to accomplish out there, because I do think it is to try to get rid of a brutal regime. I mean, what kind of people, what kind of leadership, what kind of country, kills its own citizens in tens of thousands of people, of protesters against its government, the tyranny that's going on. So, and they've been wreaking this havoc over there, this theocracy, the mullahs that have been leading the country for 47 years now. So I do think part of it is to liberate the people over there. The Persian people are very proud, people. And, at one time, in the 60s and the 70s, during the Shah's reign from 53 to 79, Iran was known, and Tehran, specifically Iran, was known as the Paris of the Middle East. And so it was a destination, and certainly that hasn't been the case in a while. So you can see that there is some hope of that, kind of returning. It seems like it's a long way off, and probably it is. But I think, keep the faith, watch episodes 19 and 20. I'm also later today, I'm going to do a video, a Four Seasons podcast specifically about the Iran conflict. So there'll be more detail on that. So I'll try to get that out as quick as possible as well. So in the meantime, go to our YouTube station, or YouTube channel rather, which is B&H Wealth Strategies. At youtube.com, or however you've got to kind of type that in, or you can go to the website. You can go back through emails. We had some recent additions, I think, that we just sent out, in our Friday, kind of previewing the podcast, where you got a link to it. So 19 and 20 talk about global conflict and how to react, and what to expect and think about through those things. A little add on to this, like I said, I'm going to do another one today. And when you go to those channels, when you go to the website, which is bhretire.com, you can get to that. But if you go to the YouTube channel, which I encourage everyone to do, please remember to like and subscribe, and to drive our membership up. We put a lot of good information out there, and tries to be directly communicative to each of you out there. So, wish us happy birthday here in a couple of weeks. If you think about it, I'll have more information on that and the celebration that we'll put together later in the year. In the meantime, keep the faith, and God bless America.